Hi there. Welcome to my attic. My name is D.G. Valdron. I'm a writer. These are some of my books. Among my books is I like to write about Doctor Who, and I like to write about obscure corners of Doctor Who, the stage plays, the animations, both professional and amateur, the audio adventures, and fan films, the grey market productions. So today we are going to talk about Devious, possibly the strangest, the most interesting, and maybe one of the most impressive fan films ever made. Except it's not quite done yet. And here's the amazing part of it. Devious started production in 1991. It was a 6-episode serial. Only 4 episodes have been released so far. We can probably expect the 5th episode in 2024, maybe the 6th episode and final episode in 2025 or 2026. This means that this project has been going for at least 33, as much as 35 years. Imagine that level of commitment. I'm astonished. I'm just speechless. And along the way, Devious has made a few marks of its own. Back in 1995, they contacted Jon Pertwee and got him to play the Doctor for them in a scene on their TARDIS set. This was Pertwee's last appearance as the Third Doctor. He passed away in 1996. And this scene was actually picked up by the BBC and included on the War Games DVD. So it's semi-pseudo-canonical. And then a few years later, back in 1999, we had a television special called Curse of Fatal Death. This was a Doctor Who tribute starring Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor, put on by Children in Need. It was about 20 minutes long. It was basically the Doctor Who for the years. And the BBC, or the Children in Need charity, needed sets, they needed props, they needed Daleks. Devious provided the TARDIS set. If you're looking at Children in Need, that's their work. That's the fans' work. Along the way, of course, the Daleks that they built appeared in Children in Need. The Daleks also appeared in a series of stage plays by Bedlam Productions, and that was Dalek Master Plan, Power of the Daleks, and Evil of the Daleks. And I believe even in a fan film possibly called Power of the Daleks Reimagined. So, on top of that, there have been supermarket appearances and public appearances, conventions that they've gone to with all their props and doodads and stuff. And they've even got some other people who were attached to the show to come in and do little cameos and photo appearances. So Devious actually has quite a track record. And honestly, when I first came across them a few years back, I thought they were insane. I thought, you know what, if you have been working on this project for 25 years and have nothing to show for it, you're probably never going to finish. But then they got an episode out, and then a year later, another episode, and then, a year or two later, and so forth. So they're up to 4. I think that's just absolutely astonishing. I can't say that enough. It's great. And the interesting thing, the lovely thing, is that these episodes are actually really good. They actually had to do extra shooting to explain how the cast visibly aged over the decades. But beyond that, there's an interesting story. There's an interesting plot. Let me give you a little bit of the background of Devious. It comes out of the notion of Season 6B. So here's what happens. Okay, it's 1969. Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, gets caught by the Time Lords. He's forced to change, and then he just goes away. Fast forward to 1970. Jon Pertwee falls out of the TARDIS, and he's the Third Doctor. But we never actually saw, Troughton change into Pertwee. It's just kind of assumed. Nobody thought about this at all. So what a bunch of fans did was they got together and thought about this and came up with a solution. They came up with the idea of a Season 6B, which is that after the Time Lords get the Troughton Doctor, they don't actually force him to regenerate into Pertwee right away. Instead, they use him as their monkey. and send them around on missions. And the the older Troughton from the three doctors and the two doctors and the five doctors, that's the post Time Lord caught you version of Troughton. Yeah, it worked well enough. And it's a kind of fun little fan thing, and the BBC actually kind of endorsed it. I like it myself. Now, what happened with Doctor Who is that back in 1989, the show's canceled. And because the show's off the air, after a year or two, fans started making their own films. The video cameras were good enough. The fan clubs were there. People were making costumes. People were making the props. They were doing their own TARDIS sets and stuff. And so you had a whole bunch of really interesting films that were coming out in Doctor Who's interim. And some of them, were terrible, obviously. Some of them were great. We had this diversity, this wild explosion of strange talent. We had Claymation Tom Baker. We had Attack of the Square Daleks. We had stuff with very dire acting and very amateurish. And then you had stuff that was almost BBC quality. Anyway, so this is kind of like where Devious was coming from. It was 1991. The cameras were good enough. Everybody was highly motivated. They were coming up with a story. And they had an actor, Tony Garner, who kind of looked like a sort of cross between Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee. He looked like some guy who was caught between the two of them, like a regeneration caught in the middle. So they got Tony Garner to play kind of like this interim doctor. So the idea of Devious is that there's a group of evil Time Lords or experimental Time Lords, and they grab Troughton just as he's transforming into his next incarnation, and they catch him in mid-regeneration, and this is Tony Garner. They wipe his memory to convince him that, they're on his side, and they drop him on this planet as part of some experiment that they're watching. But there are Daleks on this planet, and things start to go horribly wrong. So that's about it. It's done in the old classic serial format, and it's actually really well done. The first episode, we're just at sea. But as each episode goes on, we get more and more of the pieces until we follow up on this really intriguing mystery. We've got a lot of Daleks. We have Cybermen in a flashback. We have a lot of special effects, a lot of cool stuff. Devious may well be one of the best fan films ever made. And you know what? It's a labor of love. Can you imagine a bunch of people getting together for 33 or 35 years and slowly pushing up what amounts to a BBC quality, or at least a BBC in the 80s and 90s quality serial, getting that done with nothing more than love, no money, no resources, just love and skill and dedication and patience and teamwork. And you watch this, there are beautiful scenes, there is wonderful imagery, there are funny plot points. I think you should do yourself a favor and go look it up. Devious. Doctor Who, Devious. Thank you.